This is Andy Purewal for Boxing News for the first time in 2024. I'm joined by Jamie Moore over Zoom. Jamie, good to catch up. Haven't seen you for a while. Do you have a good Christmas, good New Year's? Is it still that New Year period? Shall I still be saying Happy New Year?
Oh mate, it's like the end of January nearly, isn't it? So maybe not, but yeah, it was nice. Thank you, mate. We had a nice break. We actually had 2.5 weeks off the gym, like for the first time in 7 years, for over Christmas. So it was sort of timing wise, it felt nice that we could have a bit of time off and spend it with the family.
Just on that note, Jamie, I imagine when you retired, it was something which not just Christmas, but the events and like your family get-togethers, seeing your friends, like those periods where you have to sacrifice because you're being camp, you'll be training when you was fighting, would have been somewhat something you was looking forward to getting back. Obviously, now you're training fighters. Um, does it still feel as much of a sacrifice now as what it did when you were fighting?
Well, it's probably more difficult to get time off over Christmas and New Year when you're training fighters because sort of for it to fall that he was going to fight in January or February when you're fighting, we're sort of few and far between. Whereas as a coach, if you've got a stable of 6, 7, 8 fighters, it's more likely that one of those is going to have a fight then. So it's just really felt well that it fell over Christmas and New Year. That it was a time where we could have a bit of time off. So it was good, yeah.
A bit of time off, but obviously you get straight back into. You got young Cameron Vuong in camp getting ready for his next outing. How's he been looking?
Yeah, good. We've just been to Dubai. We had a week training in Dubai with him and Jack Catterall. Took our families as well so that we could sort of um, have a little bit of a holiday as well. So it worked well, and yeah, he's been training right over Christmas and New Year himself, just back at home, and then as soon as we was back in the gym first week in January, was back at it. But he looks after himself in between fights. He's been, Matchroom have kept him really active. So we had 3 fights in 3 months straight after his debut. So it's just more of a case of just keeping that sharpness and timing rather than sort of getting him ready for a fight.
The Jordan Flynn fight, Jamie. I'm sure you've seen the few back and forths over socials between Cameron, Jordan, obviously Sam Jones getting involved, Sonny Edwards getting involved. What can you tell me about it? Is that the fight you guys are looking at to take place as quickly or as soon as possible?
Well, listen, it's a good fight. I like young prospects who are willing to take risks and fight each other early on coming through because well, it shows that the good character. It also shows that they're confident in themselves and they're ambitious. And just because you lose a fight early on against another good up and coming prospect doesn't mean the end of the world. And you can always rebuild from it and learn a lot of lessons from it. So yeah, I like it, and obviously it creates a bit of a story, and it's entertains people and stuff. So just one word of advice would always be never ever get into a Twitter spat with Sonny Edwards.
That's very good advice, Jamie. Whenever I see Sonny, I actually say to him, I hope I'm never on the wrong end of your tweets because I wouldn't fancy my chances there. But is
Nah,
it
just ignore him. The best advice: just ignore him. Don't get involved.
is it something though? Is it a fight which, from the sounds of it, it's aligned with what you'd like to do with Cameron Vong?
Yeah, so Cameron's one of those kids coming through where you've got to match him at a decent level to make sure that he improves and sort of progresses the way you want him to, so that it doesn't go backwards. You don't want good kids like him fighting journeymen for 10 or 12 fights where they learn zero lessons. They may as well go in the gym against some of the sort of journeymen who are around who just try and survive. May as well hit a punch bag. So I'd rather him be boxing kids like Jordan Flynn who are going to come ambitious, try and win the fight, and you take lessons on board. One thing what I like about prospects, not just my fighters, is when they're willing to risk losing a fight in terms to gain experience and make themselves a better fighter is a good quality. You can't be scared of losing a fight because you know you at some stage in your career you're going to get to a point where you're in a 50-50 fight and you're genuinely going to be thinking, you have that little argument in your mind, am I going to win this fight? You don't want the first time you're having those conversations with yourself be when you're going into a 50-50 fight. you need to sort of train yourself mentally as well as physically, and by doing that, putting yourself in competitive fights early on gets you ready or more equipped for further down the line when you're in more competitive fights, and it builds that mental toughness as well.
Another young charge of yours who's got to make his comeback this year and somewhat rebuild his Aqib Fiaz house.
Jackson, shush. Sorry, the
Um,
dog's going nuts.
it's all good. How's Aqib doing and how's he looking towards 2024 now?
Yeah, so Akib then, perfect example of what I've just said. You know, he's young prospect coming through. We took a risk. It didn't quite pay off, but he's took lessons on board. We've learned a lot more about Aqib in that fight, and he's learned a lot about himself than we would have known if it had gone 15, 16 and 0 against easy opponents. He's actually been matched quite tough, similar to how I would want Cameron being progressed. And I pulled him out of the fight not because I didn't think he was. Oh, sorry, and he was hurt from getting knocked down, but it was more so that he'd not performed the whole fight the way he should have, or how he can do, and I knew he was going to sort of go all guns blazing and sort of gamble everything trying to win, and 99% of the time that doesn't end well. And if it's more of a devastating loss, it's a lot more difficult from a psychological point of view to come back from than it is now. So, he's gutted, obviously, that he's lost the fight, but he understands the reasoning why I stopped the fight, and I did it for the. I'm not thinking short term and his ego and upsetting people who were there to support him. I'm thinking of the long term goal of him making sure that he hasn't got those psychological scars of maybe ended up flat on your back and then you end up a little bit gun shy. It was a competitive fight, nip and tuck, but he really wasn't performing the way he should have or the way he can do. So the reasoning behind that, we believe that we've got to the bottom of it, and I'm looking forward to him coming back out now, rebuilding, getting a couple of fights under his belt. I mean, Reece Bellotti is a lovely kid, and he's been a top level fighter for a long time. But I still believe that Aqib can beat him, and I'd love the opportunity to do that in another couple of fights time where he has a couple of fights where he gets to try and put the things right, what he went wrong on the night. And then I'd love the opportunity to do that again.
I'm going to ask Jamie. Obviously, there was a lot of talk about Aqib and Campbell Hatton potentially facing each other, but whenever he's kind of brought up, it seemed to be that there was a hope maybe for the British title, maybe for further along down the lines in their careers. But on the back of this defeat, Aqib previously people seen him as a big favourite against Campbell, but on the back of this defeat now, would it make a bit more sense to you to maybe look at a potential Aqib Fiaz Campbell Hatton fight?
Yeah, well, listen, the only problem with that I see is, I mean, people have been talking about that for a long time, but the different weight divisions. Aqib boxed for the British and Commonwealth titles at super featherweight, and from all accounts what I've seen, Campbell's boxing at super lightweight. So there's two weight divisions in between. So everyone loves a domestic fight, or a local rivalry. And if it would have made sense, I'm sure, or if it does make sense in the future, no, I'm pretty sure Aqib could box at lightweight and be competitive. But I'd rather him box, as long as he keeps. One of the problems with Aqib has been weight management in between, and he knows that he needs to address it, and he needs to be coming in sort of a little bit leaner when he's getting down to fights. So, but which has been addressed, and it's been took on board, it's been noted, and he's going to work on that. But I just don't see the point in fighting somebody a couple of weight divisions naturally bigger than you just for the sake of it, because it's a good local derby. Do you know what I mean? I've got a lot of time for Campbell Hatton. I've known him since he was a baby. Me and Ricky have been mates for many years, and it'd be very awkward. I wouldn't want that fight. I wouldn't want to be in the opposite corner to Campbell because I love him. He's a great kid. But sometimes you've just got to do those things. But I just don't see the point in trying to push it and make it just for the sake of doing it. It doesn't make sense.
I have to say, Jamie, I never thought I'd see the day you calling a Man City fan a great kid and you saying you love him.
Yeah, no. Listen. At this moment in time, United aren't doing great, are we? But you've got to enjoy the times and sort of celebrate the successes. You've also got to be humble in defeat, and you just got to take it on the chin. And we're absolutely dog shit at the minute.
I was about to say, mate, it seems to have been quite a few humblings for you guys recently.
Yeah, mate,
Um,
exactly.
but just moving forwards onto a wider scale, a bigger scale, obviously, I'm sure it's something you're probably a little bit fed up talking about, the Jack Catterall, Josh Taylor rematch. Now, obviously saw Jack's interview last week suggesting deals were agreed, spoke to Josh in Liverpool. He said that's not necessarily the case, but by all intents and purposes, it is the fight that everyone wants to push ahead with now. To your understanding, Jamie, how far off do you feel we are from an official announcement for a potential Catterall Taylor 2 rematch?
Well, from what I've heard, both guys have agreed to fight each other, and they've agreed to terms. So, you know, going off the back of that, if that's the case, then you would imagine that it won't be long before they come to some sort of deal, because there's not much more. Once you've agreed the money, the weight, there's not much more to discuss after that. Obviously, the venue and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm a couple of times when the fight's been made in the past, I was always sort of a little bit unsure. I was going, I'm not sure whether it'll happen, and it didn't. It sort of fell through. I feel more confident this time. I get the feeling that it's going to happen this time. So, and I'm glad because from a neutral point of view, sort of sitting back and watching things unfold the way they have over the last couple of years, everyone's sort of really looking forward to seeing the fight and seeing how it pans out, seeing how both guys perform. So I'm glad, and they're both going to get well paid for it, which they deserve. And it's a great domestic fight. It really is. It's a genuine grudge match between two guys who don't like each other, who are at the top end of the sport, and you don't often get that. So I'm glad for them both.
Just a couple of things with a fight I'm interested kind of prod and probe about. There's a lot of talk about the weight first and foremost. Would it be a catch weight or would it be up at 147? We know Josh has spoken about moving up in weight. What can you tell me about
Nothing. Can't tell you
that?
anything about it. My lips are sealed.
Okay, what about the venue? Obviously, I know there was talk about it potentially taking place back up in Scotland. You guys would prefer something a bit more neutral. I don't think Manchester would fall under that because Jack obviously being from Chorley, Manchester area. So away from that, is it likely to take place back up north?
Yeah, no. Listen, if I was guessing, it'd be probably neutral ground. If anything, it would be more leaning towards Jack's own venue because the first time it was in Scotland. But if it was a betting man, I'd guess it would be somewhere neutral.
That's good to know. And then obviously moving on to another fight. The trilogy, Chantel Cameron, Katie Taylor free. I'm sure I'm not the only one who would very much enjoy watching them two go at it once again after the first bouts. Just where do things currently sit with that fight as well, Jamie?
So, I, genuinely, we've not really heard anything more other than what everyone else has heard. Both people want it. I know Eddie spoke about it being at Croke Park. I'm not sure whether that is something Chantel would want to do because she's been to Dublin twice already. But because I'm guessing they're going to go do that in the summer, because it makes sense because if it's going to be outdoors, it's going to be in the summer. So there's a lot of time involved in between now and then. So I'm assuming they haven't really sat down and had those proper discussions yet because I haven't heard anything about it. So the only thing I know is that Chantal would love that third fight with Katie. I know Katie wants it as well. I know Eddie wants it. So I don't think it'll be a difficult fight to make. My only guess is probably the venue. That's it.
Obviously, just by process of elimination, there's all that talk of the potential Amanda Serrano rematch for Katie being the only one which could compete with a trilogy bout. But now that Katie's vacated some of those lightweight titles, leaves her there with just the super lightweight ones. So it must be reassuring to yourself to know realistically it is most likely going to be Taylor Cameron 3. It's one which you would look at from outside and think it's the one which makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd like to think so, because both girls. Now, I've said it about Chantel. Chantel was creating her own legacy, and the first two fights between the girls was unbelievable fights. So they'll both want to come out on top and win the trilogy. So there's no doubt in my mind. You know, I've said it about Katie loads of times before. She's such a phenomenal competitor and athlete. She set the tracks for the way all the girls are being able to sort of perform at this level now and earn the type of money they can do. So you've got to take your hat off to her. But I'm confident Chantel can beat her. And I really do believe that. And you know, I would love it to be on neutral territory so that nobody has advantages, and it's just purely based on who's the better fighter.
That was something which I was going to ask. Obviously, I know, Katie's had that dream of boxing back in Dublin. She's done that now. She also has a wider dream of potentially boxing outdoors in Ireland. Has she shown a willingness though to maybe move away from that if it meant securing a fight, securing the trilogy with Chantal?
I don't know, and so I'm but that's not my job to have the discussions. You know, I'm the coach, so I only hear what the managers and the promoters have had those discussions, and I'm assuming it's too far out for them to have actually sat down and had those discussions yet. So I haven't heard anything about it.
One potential location I want to put on the table is, do you think that it could do well out in the States, out in maybe say New York and what have you, where in Madison Square Garden, just because obviously Katie Taylor will
Look,
have that massive Irish following and she sold out MSG with Serrano, but I imagine Chantel would get quite a few to travel over as well.
yeah, and I think Katie sells in New York because of the Irish thing. I think, you know, the fight over there with Serrano was probably a lot of that was down to Serrano as well. You know, it takes two to tango, and they knew it was going to be a good fight, so it created a great atmosphere. But going off the first two fights, I think they turn out in the droves at New York. So yeah, I mean that's definitely an option in my book. You know, from my way of thinking. But I saw Chantel's interview, what she did when she was talking about she was upset the way Eddie sort of celebrated Katie's victory and sort of looked upset when she won the fight. And I get that. You know, he is the promoter of both of them, so I do understand that. And if he's pushing to try and get Katie to fight in Dublin again and give her the advantage, then that just sort of reinforces what Chantal was saying. Although, if I'm a neutral stepping back, or I'm in Eddie's shoes, and sort of he's had Katie from the beginning, he's always had this dream in his mind of doing a fight at Croke Park, then if you're sort of envisioning that, then what better fight would you want than a trilogy fight, which is a decider to put in that venue? So even though I'm Chantel Cameron team all day, I understand where Eddie's coming from, but if I'm sat in those negotiations as Chantel's manager, which I'm not, but if I was, I would be 100% pushing, saying it needs to be on neutral territory. Katie can have a homecoming at Croke Park afterwards as a farewell fight, but we're not willing to give up the advantage of giving it to Katie at home. Maybe that might lose Chantal the fight, and that's the risk what you have. You know, because it's a huge fight, and I wouldn't want that to happen for her. But also, I feel like it should be a fair draw.
Jamie, just moving away from that, just get your thoughts on some upcoming fights before I let you enjoy the rest of your day. Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk's a matter of weeks away now. That undisputed heavyweight crown on the line. What do you think goes down in Saudi Arabia?
So I think, you know, the old saying, a good big and always beats a good little one. I don't think Tyson Fury will try and box with him, to be honest. I think he'll put it on Usyk. I think people have had most success with Usyk when they've made it simple and sort of not tried to box with him. Why would you try and sort of box with someone with his boxing IQ? And he's got to use his advantages in terms of size. We've seen that, potentially he's a little bit weak downstairs. I've got a feeling Tyson Fury boxes southpaw because he's boxed southpaw in a few fights, in the past at quite a high level. And I feel like he could probably get his own jab off a lot better from the southpaw point of view. So yeah, I think he makes it messy, raw, uses his weight, leans on him, works him on the inside. But I think he boxes at southpaw.
It isn't going to be a pretty fight from when I ask people about it. Nobody expects it to be like a boxing masterclass, but it's certainly one which is exciting everybody, isn't it, Jamie?
It's intriguing. I mean, the big question for me is, I know there's that little question of, does Tyson Fury, is he still the fighter he was because of the performance against Ngannou? But for me, that was just that he didn't expect it to be a tough fight. And then once you're in there, it's really difficult to drag yourself back into the mindset that it's going to be a hard fight. So I think I'm more intrigued by how does Usyk deal with Fury. That's the one for me. I know it's not going to be an exciting fight. I'd much rather see, if you ask me what heavyweight fight do you want to see? I want to see Fury versus AJ. I'd actually prefer to see AJ versus Ngannou than I do Usyk Fury, even though Usyk Fury is the number one and number two, whichever way you want to put it, fighting each other. But from an entertainment point of view, I'd rather watch AJ versus Ngannou. But from a purist point of view, then Fury for me, it's his fight to lose. I don't think Usyk is going to be able to deal with him, but that's the intrigue in it for me. How's he going to deal with Fury?
You mentioned him there, though, from an entertainment perspective, you'd like to see Joshua Ngannou a little bit more, and you get to do that a matter of weeks later back in Saudi Arabia. What are your thoughts on that matchup?
I thought AJ looked superb in his last fight. I thought he looked by far the best he's looked for a long time, and I think I did an interview with you after the Usyk fight and the second Usyk fight, and I was sort of saying he needs to get back to where he was sort of carefree and he just relaxes and lets his hands go. And I think we was talking about how many different coaches he's had, and I'd said something along the lines of, I think he's got all the knowledge on board now. He just needs to forget about thinking about it too much and just go in there and let it sort of flow out with him. And that's what it looked like last time. It looked like he was an experienced fighter who got his confidence back, who went in there, let his hands go, and got back to that sort of menacing, destructive mentality. So now that's why I want to see him fight Tyson Fury now, because now I get the feeling we're going to see Fury at his best and AJ at his best, and then may the best man win. The question mark about this fight with Ngannou is, it looks like he's got a really good chin, Ngannou. Looks like he can punch. And he said, what's getting me intrigued about it is what's going to happen when AJ lands on him, and then what's going to happen when Ngannou lands on AJ. Like, going back to before Fury fought him, I was sort of saying, this could be the worst thing ever for boxing, because you get someone crossing over coming from a UFC background and they beat the best heavyweight on the planet. It's not a good look. But let me tell you, we was in the UFC Performance Center in Las Vegas 2019, and Ngannou was training in the boxing facility while we was there, and he was sparring and he was training with his coach on a body belt, and we was all looking at him going, wow, he can really fight. And we were saying, if he turned professional, he could probably do really well. So it's not like it was an overnight thing and it was a one camp, one fight, went in there and performed like that against Fiore. He's been boxing for years. He's just not actually competed. in a boxing ring, but he knows what he's doing.
Parker Zhang.
Parker Zhang, yeah, sorry, my dog's.
It's all
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can take Parker's last performance against Wilder. You know, I've seen a lot of comments saying it was more down to Wilder's bad performance. Mate, Parker's been around at that top level for a long time. And I'm pretty sure if Parker didn't perform the way he did, then Wilder, if it was a lesser opponent, would have gone in there and smoked him and looked $1 million. So it was definitely, for me, in my book, down to Parker's performance, why he neutralised a lot of the stuff what Wilder could do. I'd love for him to beat Zhang. Like the only thing is his coming out party last time Zhang was pretty impressive, and you know, thinking about Parker against the southpaw, I'm not really sure if his style could sort of cope with it, even though he's probably had a lot of experience because Fury does like to switch southpaw a lot. So if you're asking me who I think could win, I'd probably go Zhang, but I wouldn't be surprised if Parker pulled it off because he seems like he's in that Indian summer where he's got a lot of experience under his belt now, and he's still young enough and fresh enough to put that experience into practice.
Jamie, big fight next week domestically. Joshua Buatsi and Dan Azeez. Who do you think is going to come out on top?
Dan Azeez is a good fighter, you know, underrated. I was in there against him with Rocky Fielding. I know Rocky was towards the end of his career, but he's very well schooled, and some of the stuff he does is very cute, and it's like old school stuff. He's got a lovely little short jab on the way in. His timing's really good. Buatsi's huge at the weight, and because of that little bit of needle there now, and there's that rivalry because they know each other. Sometimes ego gets involved, and when you start fighting with your heart rather than your head, then that can land you in trouble sometimes. And we've seen in the past, Boatsi has been sort of talked into having a fight with somebody when really we know he should be using his skills and his better assets. I'm pretty certain that Azeez is going to try and do that to him. You know, try and drag him into more of a tough fight to make it more of his fight on the inside. It's whether Boatsi's took those lessons on board in the past where he's been dragged in, and whether he then goes, I know what you're trying to do, but I'm going to stick to what I need to do to win the fight. Great domestic fight. I'm loving it. I've got a feeling Boatsi is going to have learned enough in the past to pull it out, but I think it's going to be razor tight. I think Azeez is going to really, really drag him into a hard fight down the stretch. I think the last sort of third of the fight is going to be really entertaining. I think it'll go to points, and I think Buatsi wins on points, but I think it'd be really close.
Final one from me, Jamie. Some reports earlier of a potential fight up at 154 taking place at the end of March between Tszyu and Keith Thurman. Interested in that one? What do you think would happen if that one did take place?
Yeah, Tszyu really coming to his own. I like him. I think it's always difficult with fighters coming in the dad's footsteps and trying to, you know, everyone sort of expects him or wants him to emulate the success of the dad. So it's a lot of pressure, and I love to see successful kids come through like that who have sort of stepped out of the shadow of the dads and made something of themselves under all that pressure. You know, I actually had this conversation the other day about Campbell Hatton. I've got so much. I admire him so much from the context of it's so difficult to succeed in boxing, and for you to have the drive and determination to get up and do it every single day, to want generally it's to make a better life for yourself. You know, the vast majority of us in this sport have come from backgrounds where you go, I'm never going to do anything if I just stay around here on this council estate. And boxing is one of the only outlets where you can go, that's going to be my vehicle to get out of this shit situation. Campbell Hatton's one of those rare occasions where his dad's very fortunate enough to have made a great career for himself and set himself up for life. So he doesn't have to do it. He really doesn't have to do it, but he wants to do it, which in many ways is more admirable than another boxer doing it in our desperation. I did it out of desperation. I wanted to make a better life for myself. He's doing it just purely for the love of it. So in many ways, he's more admirable. So the same with Tszyu. He probably didn't have to do it, but he's doing it for the love of the sport because he loves to do it, which makes it more respectable. And for what he's achieved now, it's great. That's Keith Thurman. You know, he's probably past his best, but it's a really good yardstick. It's a good test for him, and stylistically, it'd be a really good fight.
Jamie, I appreciate you jumping on and doing this Zoom. I'm leaving you to enjoy the rest of your day and the months ahead. I'm sure I'll catch you at a fight very soon. Thanks for speaking to me.
No, it's a nice one, pal.